You can't have too much arts, right? What's too much? Let's worry about it when we don't have enough.
Well, we call meeting Janet as being the designee of the nominating committee, or whatever it was, the search committee. And I recall those first meetings where we were introduced to Janet, and she was hired, and the organization all of a sudden got a swift kick and became much more active and involved, and all of a sudden there was excitement and stuff going on.
I remember when I came, it was right after the 25th anniversary gala, and I remember that Dolly DiMarzo raised $90,000 at that gala, and I thought to myself, how am I going to top that?
Interesting ones was in North White Plains at the train North Repair Center, and it was a real experience for everybody to try to put a gala together in this hangar, whatever, this
but it was
train
very
facility.
exciting.
The event was in late November, and it was, Big Tent was set up a couple of days, a day or so in advance, and the weather was getting colder and colder and windier that day. And I went over again in the afternoon. I was president. I was president then.
My parents came to it. They sat in their coats the entire.
Tito Puente was the musician, the entertainer. And I went over early that day to see again how they were doing and setting up and help out a little bit. And I realized it was really cold. And Janet and I spoke, and I said, it's too cold. And she said, I know, I've been on the phone with the city, and they will not let us have heaters. And it was.
They came over and kind of.
And then finally, just before, or within hours before, the city relented and allowed these big blower things to heat up the place. I wore long underwear. I had my tuxedo on and long underwear
George
on.
Delaney had on Selena's fur coat.
It was very cold. My in-laws were our guests that night, my Jane's parents, and I remember your mother wore their big coat the whole time. Everybody couldn't take their coats off. It was 50 degrees in there. I remember a reaction that you had to something that I enunciated early on, and you said, wow, that should be the theme, and it had to do with values. In other words, really pulling art and artistic accomplishment and saying, and emphasizing even more that was what we were doing. We were enabling those wonderful, valuable parts of the community to flourish, and we began to sort of really shift try to really emphasize that, and a lot of things that Janet did. But I enunciated it in the context of almost a spiritual value that needed to be inculcated into this project, and it was something that I don't know whether it was accomplished, but it was something that I thought strongly about. I want to get slightly ahead of my presidency to talk about how important it was when the various physical moves of the council during those early years, out of 701 and then over to Waller Avenue and then ultimately to 31, and Janet's vision and all of the behind-the-scenes aspects of those moves and how important they were to the council. But we can talk about that.
I remember interviewing Janet. Let me go back to that. Because I was on the executive committee, and the executive committee became the search committee for the new executive director when it happened that Chris Brule was leaving. And we had several candidates that we interviewed. I think we narrowed it down to 3 or 4, and we interviewed them. And most of them, of course, spent the interview telling us about their accomplishments and sort of selling themselves to us. And then came in Janet, very casual. She sort of sat down, and what I've always said is, she put the rest of us at ease. She made us feel, oh, okay, we can relax now with this person. And she did tell us about what she had done in Boston, building the Art Center in Boston. It was all very impressive, but I think it was the feeling that this was somebody that you could work with, that was probably a dynamo, but didn't hit you over the head with it, okay? And so we offered her the job, and she took it. And I remember her saying to me once, "How many people did you offer the job to who said no before you hired me?" We were now at Waller Avenue and trying to decide where we would go from there, because we had been in the corporate environment on Westchester Avenue. We certainly didn't want that. And Janet had been saying for years that she wanted to be in a place where we were on the street, where people could walk in. Well, Waller Avenue was on the street, and we thought about buying that building, as I remember, because it was for sale and we could have bought it. But Janet had her eye on the Chase building for many years. And that was the street she was talking about. It was a major street. You could get there on the bus. You could get there in many ways. And she really persuaded us that that was the place we should move to, that we should buy. Well, it was a little on the pricey side, a little pricier than Waller Avenue. But I guess if we're looking for accomplishments, although I don't feel certainly that I did this single-handedly, but I was the president of the board when we took the vote in 1998 to purchase that building. And I mean, Janet was encouraging us all the way, of course, and she was the one talking to Chase and making the financial arrangement. Later, we had $1.5 million mortgage when we bought the building, and as you all know, a couple of years later, Janet persuaded them to forgive the mortgage.
We had been all talking, trying to figure out whether there was a way to buy the building, and he's cut through everything and said to us, "I want you to dream your dreams, and we'll see if we can make it happen." And this was contrary to what the Chase people had been telling us. They had been saying, you have to buy it for the appraised value, and there were all kinds of issues, and we have offers from several hotels, and a few, this, that, and the other thing. And then he left. And the Chase people said, "What was that?" And we said, "What did he mean? Can we dream? Can we buy it?" And they said, "No, we have to do this according to the procedures that are laid out for the deacquisition of real estate." So we stayed in touch, constantly talking to the people, and then they had to get a new appraisal. And they got an appraisal, and the consultant called Janet, and I actually spoke to him, and he said, "We got the appraisal in, it's 1.3 because 1.2 because of all the stuff that was in the building, the asbestos and the condition and whatnot, and but it was an opportunity for, at least now there was a number that we could possibly reach." So that Janet had the amazingly obscure idea to honor Chase that year at the County Center Gala. And
Direct. I don't remember, but
and so we were at the gala at the County Center, and I remember I saw Sal Camprofranco.
They were all with cigars in their mouth.
And I was Caesar and
Rick Jones.
Right. They were standing around talking, and I saw them when I walked up to them, and I had just the day before spoken to the consultant who had told us that the appraisal was 1.2. And I got involved in the conversation, and Caesar says, "So, do you want to buy the building?" And I said, "Yeah, we want to buy the building." He says, "How much?" I said, 1.2, magic number. And he said, "Sold." And I said, "A couple things." He said, "What?" And I said, "We need some working capital." "And how much do you need?" 150,000. "Okay." And then I said, "But we need something else." He said, "What?" I said, "We need a mortgage." "How much?" $1,350,000. And he said, "Okay." And I said, "One more thing." And he said, "What?" And I said, "No debt service." And he said, "How long?" And I said, 5 years. I said, 5 years. And then he looked at me and he said, market rates? And I said, yes. And he said, you have a deal. And I went over to Janet, I said, we just bought the building.
I came in at an easy time. I think actually I joined the board around shortly before the mortgage burning ceremony at the Grant's house. And we were off to the races, but what really hadn't been discussed was that Janet had bought a fixer-upper. And so the capital campaign was born under your leadership, Jamie. Right. And it was in some ways a terrifying thing, because we were talking about a very large campaign for what had been a relatively small organization, and we were very, very concerned about our ability to raise that money, as well as the needs for the building. And we had a lot of controversy within the arts organizations because they felt that the building was diverting funds from their organizations, and as just heard, the building would ultimately compete potentially with their organizations. But the beautiful thing about our new home is that it really has done what they set out to do. It's a good arts incubator. It's a great way to showcase Westchester artists. And I think one of the earliest events there with Open Studios continues to this day, and it's one of my favorites, Westchester's Best Artists. And it has been really a treasure that can't be duplicated really with any of the other affiliates easily. And then of course I think it has enabled us to take it a step further in terms of these collaborations where we've involved all the arts organizations throughout Westchester and use our building and also their venues as a way of trying to link those art organizations, big and small, together, which has been a wonderful experience, and I think has benefited all of the arts organizations throughout Westchester.
If I could just say one thing.
My part was
Overseeing the capital campaign?
Overseeing the capital campaign, and, which was very difficult.
One day, my daughter starts in school from maybe second or third grade, starts talking about how they were doing, writing letters as if they were in Revolutionary War times. And I was very interested, and she told, I asked her a little bit about it, and she said, yeah, you have to make believe like you were in that. I didn't even realize what it was. And a couple of months later, there was a presentation of a program at the Arts Council, and I realized that that program that she had been involved in was one of our programs. I never even put the two together until after that. I said, wow, my daughter was the beneficiary of one of the programs. I didn't even know that it was going on, and I was the president.
The Diversity Initiative, which was controversial with many of the affiliates. Many embraced it and saw the need for trying to increase diversity on their boards and in their offerings and in terms of the public that they served, but many resisted it, and it was something that we had to go through a long process of education and coaching, and it was really a year-long effort, but ultimately I think it bears some good fruit.
Today is that it is all over. And I'm looking at you, you personify what happened, which I hoped would happen. But I gave my life to making it happen. Professionally, I gave my life to it. I didn't expect to do that, but it turned out that way. When you die, how often can you point to an organization that wouldn't have existed? George is trying to do this, and you're not helping him. You're not giving him money. You've got to give him money. Money! Money! It's the only. And they listen. Rockefeller is trying to steal this thing for his own purposes. And I couldn't say, okay, Elaine, we'll do it your way, because among other things, Nelson Rockefeller was a huge supporter of the arts, and we all knew it, and there was no way we were going to alienate him. But she got so stirred up that she frightened Ogden Reed into resigning as chairman of the Arts Council. Now, if I'd had my wits about me or had more knowledge of the political situation, I would have said, okay, you're gone now. Elaine, you stay. Be quiet, just stay. But no, I had to get rid of Elaine too. Because she had been so disruptive. So I did get rid of her. But then she fired off letters to the Reporter-Dispatch and the Scarsdale Inquirer and this stuff in the files about this. She was very adroit. She was a very bright lady. John Denver, in his very early career, came and gave us an event.
Nice.
Another one was Morton Feldman. Does that name ring any bell?
Sure. Well, if that's
Composer.
the same one.
And he also came and gave us a wonderful evening. I remember at the Scarsdale Movie Theater.
Oh, that old
Garth
theater?
Road, remember that?
Yeah, that fire trap, yeah.
And I remember there was a guy in the middle of the Feldman music, which is not everybody's taste, started shouting. He's screaming, really, and having to sit there listening to this stuff. It was terrible. And I went up to him and said, shut up, or get out. I never would have imagined that we would get that building. It's just breathtaking to me still, whenever I walk into it.
It's still a fixer.
We were not buying his building on Waller Avenue, but we were going to buy the Chase building.
The board woke up to this and heard it from you, and you developed those programs. And those early 90s was that period when all of a sudden the council broadened its scope.